Hey gang, what's happening? Gonna wait around for a minute and see if anybody joins me. Let's just find out. I gotta get rid of this while I'm getting rid of things. Waiting around to see if anybody's up this evening. Late night learning has a topic, as it often does. I'm wearing some different glasses tonight. I like them, I think. I think. I'm not sure about the bottom being so clear. Guess I'll find out soon enough. Let's see if anybody's around this evening. La la la. Anybody here? Anybody here? Oh man, Wednesday night, midweek. I'm feeling it a little bit today, just a little. It's feeling a little bit Wednesday-ish to me today. Hope everybody's doing fine, doing well. Kind of. Hey, Mark, what's going on, man? Um, how you been? By the way, I've been meaning to ask you. Did you get sick after NAM? I've been wondering that. I've been wondering about everybody that got sick after NAM. Curious. So I'm going to give it another minute. Oh, wait a minute. Someone's texting me. Oh. Okay. I have to deal with something. This is interesting. I'm getting a message that I can't ignore right now. How you guys like how about this quarantine here, man? Starting to get ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. Let me deal with this. Kelly, hey, how are you doing? You ever going to be flying back out here again? I know, the world's kind of closed right now, huh? Hey, Douglas. So, yeah, Wednesday, like I was saying, I was in the pool and got out of the pool and just kind of did this, and here's the quarantine here. Tonight, I started thinking about something. I've been asked quite a bit through the years. Do you read music? Is it important to read music? Blah 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 blah. The answer is a short and simple yes. I do read music. How important is it? Um, I'm a studio musician. That's ultimately what I do. I don't tour anymore. Not that I wouldn't, but I don't. Um, and I don't learn songs and then commit them to memory anymore. So I'm always making charts, writing notes to myself, trying to figure out exactly what's going on musically. So I think like most of us, I've come up with a shorthand of my own for charting things. Mark, I'm glad to see that you didn't get sick, man. I was definitely wondering about that. Um, Mark got a patented buddy hug at NAM, and it was yeah, I got really really sick. I've wondered if I got COVID in fact at NAM. We'll see. I'm gonna get tested for antibodies. Anyway, back to the topic at hand here. Um, do I read music? How important is it to read music? I'd say that when I was coming through rock bands and doing all of the stuff that you do in college and whatnot, it was incredibly important for me when I was doing the marching thing at Alabama, and certainly marching snare guys like myself. We all have a pretty strong reading. Yeah, I don't know how much of an honor it was for those people that did get sick. Mark, that's funny. But reading the stuff, it's always helped me to know how to read. And some people have even gone so far as to argue that reading music kills your creativity, which I just think is a load of crap. Um, Anything that helps me to further my ideas musically and to put them out into the world is something that I should know how to do. So, for instance, if I'm going to be given a chart that is, let's say it's a keyboard part, which is not uncommon for there not to be a drum chart. And frankly, I kind of prefer it when it's not a drum chart because that way I can do whatever I need. I can't get past the quarantine here. This is amazing. Um, anyway, when I have the charts and the ability to write my own shorthand, and that's something I mentioned a second ago that I've come up with. Every studio guy that I know comes up with their own shorthand, and I've got just a few little things that I do. Sometimes I won't even write out the actual notation. I'll just write a phrase verbally on the page, and that in my brain means play this thing that I know how to play. So that's sort of my own shorthand. But once in a while, I get handed a piece of music that's an actual chart. And if I didn't get handed that, if I didn't know how to read it and interpret it and make music out of it, then I certainly would not be able to have the career that I have. I would not be able to have a successful studio career because, as they say, time is money. And in the studio, that is abundantly clear because you're spending other people's money with your time. So if you've got to learn the song and you've got to listen to it 4 or 5 times to learn the song in the studio, then people are going to be pretty upset with you. So for me, the ability to read has been incredibly important. Mike Vermillion from Sledgepad, we've been working together a bit. I've been giving him some lessons as of late, and it's been interesting because his reading was not particularly strong, and we've been getting his reading stronger. So it's been fun to me to watch his success. Every once in a while, you'll see a moment where he just goes ping, and he gets it. And all of a sudden, this thing that seemed so difficult 10 minutes ago is super easy for him to do because it is about having the alphabet. It is about understanding literally the dictionary of music. So that's the whole thing, is if you can understand the dictionary of music, then there's no downside to it. Because if you couldn't read the words in the actual dictionary, Webster's, then you wouldn't be able to enjoy Shakespeare. You wouldn't be able to read Robert Crichton, if that's your thing. You wouldn't be able to read any of the stuff that we enjoy without knowing how it's all broken down. So that's why I don't have a lot of patience for people who say that reading music, or taking lessons for that matter, stifles creativity. That's absolutely crap. Not one bit of my creativity was ever stifled by understanding and knowing more about music. Not one bit of it. That's a terrible, terrible argument that makes no sense at all. So just as a for instance, I'd like to show you a chart that I was given 2 days ago for a piece. I've covered up the artist, I've covered up the title, but I'm going to show you, so come with me. Let me see here. That's page 1, way over there. This is the chart. Like it just keeps on going, That is one piece of music. One piece of music, right there. One piece of music. Now, can you imagine me trying to figure that out on my own without having the notes written on the page? That would take me a month. Instead, I've got it all here. That's a huge piece of music, I'm telling you. So that is what I'm going to be working on over the next couple of days. And because I've got it charted, because I'm making my own shorthand on it, I've got to figure out how many music stands I have in the room so that I can actually put all these pages on the music stands and read it. I tried to do it on my iPad, and it's just too crazy. There's too many pages, so I'm physically going to put them on stands. Go figure. It's going to be nuts. But that's one of the things that helps me. If I didn't have the ability to interpret those pieces of music, then again, that would be a job I would have lost immediately. So here we are once again having the conversation of, is it important to read music? Can you have a career without reading music? It's worked for Dennis Chambers. Dude can't read or doesn't read. It worked for him. Wouldn't work for me. He's also a more talented drummer than I am. So there's a lot to it that is your personal need. For me, I've simply got to have the ability to read. Without that ability, my career doesn't go anywhere. I remember my earliest studio sessions not quite understanding what I was in for, and I would sit down and start just scribbling out notes. And part of that was I was in Nashville at the time. So part of that was the Nashville number system, which I learned pretty quickly, but it doesn't help drummers very much. We had to learn to write out our shorthand in Nashville numbers way some way that made sense. And we can talk about Nashville numbers another time. But for me, actually writing out notes, the notation, there's in this piece that's on the floor here, that piece of music has a lot of pretty intricate drum parts that mirror what the guitar and bass are doing. So I'm, writing those out so that I know exactly what drums I'm hitting when and all of this. But then there are some of those moments that I mentioned early where I just write. There's one thing that I just call the one-eye and I'll write one-eye and on the page, and I know what I'm playing. That's not rhythmically correct, but when I put that on the page, I know exactly what I'm supposed to play there. So it works really well for me. You guys might notice too, I'm going to scooch away here. I've gone back to the maple setup here, and I have switched over to some Sennheiser mics now, so that's a good thing too. But I went back to the maple kit because I was having some hand problems, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, and it turns out that I was having to muscle the spruce kit, that's the fade kit. I was having to muscle that one pretty hard to play that particular piece of music, it requires a lot of muscle, and that spruce kit, while it sounds amazing, it's my number one kit, that kit requires a lot of work to get the shells moving, and I don't mind that typically because I'm a big guy, and I hit pretty hard. Anybody that's gigged with me knows I can hit pretty hard. But that on this particular song, I wanted something that was a little shorter note and gave me a quicker response time, and the maple did that. Plus, it's got ambassador heads on it, so thinner heads make for a quicker response as well. The other kit has vintage emperors, which are the thickest two-ply head that Remo makes. So that also played into it. It's just kind of set up for big rock and roll or ballads, and this one's more set up for fusion, which is what this piece on the floor is. So hey Chad, good to see you, man. Yeah, teach a man to fish is what I'm trying, brother. Oh boy, it's really an interesting thing to me. Does anybody have any questions about reading? Anybody have any thoughts about reading? I certainly would be interested in having a conversation with you about it, because it has served me well through my life. Certainly, get up and go to a studio gig, or let me tell my favorite bad studio session story. I went to the studio here in LA. Don't remember what room it was. Been to too many of them. But I went to the room, whatever the room was, the studio was, and it had the greatest platinum record of all time. In the bathroom, over the toilet, was David Hasselhoff's platinum record, because he had recorded one of his records there. I loved that. Yeah, Douglas Blackman says that reading music got him a scholarship to college, which I totally believe that. I can absolutely see that being the case. So back to my studio story. There was this one moment where one particular session was a jazz singer, and she had a couple of different producers on the gig, which I thought was an interesting choice. They were both there to help her guide this particular piece of music, and one particular producer's job, as it turned out, was to stand right here behind me in the room. Hey, Charles. So literally, he was behind me in the session, looking over my shoulder. Now that made me pretty nervous, right? And we had charts up, but I didn't write notation. I wrote out my shorthand charts, and everything was going okay. And he would lean down between takes. This producer, he'd lean down in my ear, and he'd say, "Hey, you think you could play the second bar like you played the fifth bar?" Okay, that wasn't so terrible. But then at one point he leaned down and he literally said to me, "Hey, can you take the third note out of the right hand in the third measure?" And my head's gone, because I didn't have a clue what I had just played. Like I said, I didn't have them written out. So what I ended up having to do was write it out exactly, note for note, what I was playing, and then he and I could discuss what he wanted me to keep, what he wanted me to throw out. And again, if I didn't know how to read music, then that would have been a session lost. And I was really glad that I didn't have that happen. So without the ability to read, I would never have gotten through that session. And just for the record, by the end of that day, I'd made a new friend in Doug Ross, the bass player. He was great. I really enjoyed working with him. I worked with him for the next 5 years on some things. Um, and I was a complete and utter wreck because having that guy stand behind me the whole time was nerve shattering, as you can imagine, right? I mean, it was a shockingly difficult thing to have someone critiquing your every note in the middle of a recording session. It was unlike anything I've ever been a part of before or since. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but both of the producers were Grammy winners, so there was some pressure on about that as well. But fortunately, the recording went well. I mean, the song never really did much, but that's okay. It was a good time, and I definitely learned a lot during that. I don't know. Um, I don't know if I could do it again. I don't know if I would do it again. I don't know if I'd accept it now, like I did then, but who knows? Um, perhaps I perhaps I would. But Douglas mentioning that it got him a scholarship, being able to read music. That's the sort of thing that reading music does for people. Is it's really the alphabet of music. So if you know the alphabet, then you can string together words and make beautiful poems. And that's how I've always looked at being able to read and write. My friend Doug Tan is one of the best drum kit readers I've ever seen. It's frightening how good he is at reading. And I'd take lessons from Doug occasionally. And when I go to Doug's place, which obviously now I can't, but when I would go to his place to take lessons, um, he would beat me about the head over my reading because my reading is good. My reading is not great because I've gotten so accustomed to writing the shorthand, doing the buddy notation, that when I see it written out like this piece on the floor, and that sometimes can take a little bit that can take a little time for me to start to remember how to do it. And that's a big thing. Yeah, Chad says it's the semantics we've created to communicate musical ideas over distance. That's a very, very good way to put that. And that's exactly right, because, again, I always come back to the alphabet of music. That's how I phrase that, Chad. And without understanding your ABCs, how can you possibly become a great poet, a great writer? The answer is you can't. And because a lot of you have joined since I started this, I'm going to show this piece of music one more time just because it's fun. I'm doing this session this week, and this is the piece of music. This is one piece of music. I covered the title and the artist because I don't want anybody to see that. But this is one piece of music. This is the chart for one thing. That's ridiculous, right? I don't even know how I'm going to get all that on a music stand. What's up, Alva Gibson? How are you, man? Good to see you. Thanks, brother. That if I didn't know how to read, if I couldn't interpret the print on the page here, I would never, ever, ever be able to do that gig. Extreme close up. So, back to the topic at hand. Man, look at that quarantine hair. Holy cow. That's getting crazy. Yeah, Douglas said music theory kicked his butt. Yeah, drummers, we have a hard time with music theory. We don't get a lot of theory just in our instrument, where the way a piano player or a trumpet player or anything else would. So it can be very challenging to understand music theory when you're a drummer. I really didn't understand music theory, and I'm still not someone that I would consider to be, an absolute top shelf expert at it. Even though I make 80% of my living as a composer. So I have a basic understanding of it, obviously, but to some people that are truly gifted music theorists blow my mind. Oh, Alva, thanks, man. I appreciate the share there a whole lot. Really do. So, back to the music theory thing. Yeah, understanding how to read is a big part of music theory, and understanding the bar lines and all the rhythm stuff. Drummers are great at that. We're great at that. However, understanding keys and this relative minor to that relative major, that takes some time. The circle of fifths and all of that. That stuff all takes a while to get right when you're a drummer in particular. But if you don't have the basics of how to read, then you'll never understand music theory on a deeper level. I don't know about you guys. I started watching Love and Mercy last night. I haven't gotten through it yet because I got too tired. Love and Mercy is the story of Brian Wilson, and it's been really fascinating to me to watch how Brian Wilson worked and his mental health issues that he dealt with and deals with, I would assume. If you guys get a chance to check that out, and John Cusack is absolutely brilliant in it, doing an older Brian Wilson. So give that a look. But it's really fascinating because his abilities musically were not limited by his abilities as a musician, as a reader, because he can write it all down, he can read it all, tell you what it is, how to fix it, how to change it, all on the page because he's hearing it in his mind. And I think that's one of the things about reading. Most of the people that I know, and certainly this is the case for me, when I see something on the page, I'm not just looking at it and I'm not looking at it like it's some ancient dead language. When I look at it, I hear it in my head, and I think that's a big part of music reading. This chart that's on the floor here, what is it? 12 pages? Yeah, 11. So it's 11 pages. When I look at that and listen to the tune, because I've got a sketch of it, I immediately see where we are and hear where we are and hear the drum parts going in my head. And I think that's a big part of it, is taking what's on the printed page and making something musical out of it. And that's something that's a skill, because I talk a lot about this. I'm a talented person, but I'm not uber talented. Some people I know are just, talented through the roof. My friend Ryan Saranich is one of them. And literally these guys can play any instrument. They can sing anything. They can do anything. I'm not that guy. I play piano okay. I'm a decent drummer. I'm a pretty good singer. That's what I do. So having the abilities that I have, the talents that I have, what I did was maximize my skill level. Talent is one thing, skill is another. Thanks, Mark. The talent level is one thing. So let's say that my talent level is here, right? Well, if I've got a skill level that's here, what's the point of having a talent level here? There is none. There is none. So quite literally, it's hard for me to see guys who are uber talented who never bother to develop their skill. So what I've tried to do is push my skill as far as I possibly can, so that my skill even outpaces my talent level. Does that make sense? I'm getting a little distracted because I heard a couple things coming in. Sorry. Talent level, I want to push my skill. That's the whole thing. So I've been able to build a whole career. I thought I was going to be a rock star. Who doesn't? I thought I was going to be this giant touring drummer. It turns out I'm a composer for television and film who happens to have drums as his main instrument. So I compose from the drums most of the time. And I have piano sitting over there, keyboard anyway, sitting over there. And I've got a good harmony ear. So I've built a skill level that maximizes my talent. And part of that is my ability to read music. Because I can read, that's a skill that has helped me maximize my talent. Make sense? I hope so. I hope so. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that, Alva. These videos have been really interesting to me because I started out doing things that I was terrible at, and that was the whole idea was hey, watch this guy suck on camera, and I'm probably going to do more of those. I'm trying to learn some new things. My wife got me a drum book about 2 weeks ago, that I had mentioned before, and she remembered I mentioned it, and she grabbed it, and she knocked it out of the park, brother. Let me tell you with what it is. So I'm going to end up probably trying to learn some stuff out of that book on camera and let you guys all laugh at me while I'm doing it. But my goal has always been, and I see James Brantley has joined. So James, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. My goal has always, always, always been to be elite. I want to be elite at this stuff. So that's a big thing that taking talent, maximizing skill can do is it can help you approach the elite status, and that's what I'm trying to do as a composer, as certainly as a drummer, as a husband, as a human. I want to be the best possible version of myself, and I haven't always done that. I think that's the way life goes, but certainly I'm trying to do that, and I think that's one of the things we all strive for. Chad, what are you saying here, brother? Okay, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Chad is telling me about my music stand problem because I've got this 11-page chart back here on the floor. Some of you have joined since that, but that's all one piece of music there that I've got to record later this week. Let's see, Caleb. How are you doing, Caleb? Caleb says, I think it's a great beginner's introduction to music also. I suggest to beginners all the time to take the extra time to learn to read music. I've played all my life, and reading music still teaches me stuff. Absolutely. The books, like the one I just said about my wife that she gave me, if I couldn't read, I couldn't learn the stuff that's in the book, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, is understanding how to do that. So I completely agree with you, man. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the endorsement thing. I did a video on endorsements. What day was that? I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago. He says it needs a lot more views. I agree. I do these late at night because I know it's only musicians up. So I'm certain that I don't get as many views as I could if I did it in the mornings or whatever. But I want to talk to my people. You guys are my people. But feel free to share it and to point people toward it. Alva, thanks, brother, man. Let's see what we got. Well, send me some stuff, brother. Let's see what we got. We'll definitely figure it out. Anyway, back to reading music. Alva says that I'm a rock star in his opinion, and I appreciate it. So back to reading, what we just said, what I just said to Caleb. Yeah, all the musicians are sleeping, Mark, because we don't have any gigs right now. Although I have to say, I've been really, really busy with the quarantine because I've got this studio, and it sounds amazing in here. I've been crazy busy. It's been fantastic. Working on that album that I covered a couple nights ago, and the snare drum thing a couple nights ago, as well as several other things, a couple of TV things. So it's been just kind of fun being here and doing all this stuff, and I like it. Anyway, yeah, the musicians are sleeping, I guess. Wow, it's crazy. Anyway, back to reading music. It is about the basics. It is, like Caleb said, about, here, beginner, this is a way that you can actually give yourself a head start if you learn how to do it. I mentioned Mike Vermillion earlier. By the way, he's got a company called Sledge Pad. They make bass drum damping pads. And I'm not a person that uses a lot of muffling at all. In fact, on every drum that you can see in the picture, only the 22-inch bass drum over there has any muffling in it at all. None of the rest of them do. And I ultimately got, I wasn't getting exactly the sound I was looking for out of something, or I was looking for a different sound. And so Mike sent me a few Sledge pads, and I'm really impressed. They really work well, and they don't kill the tone. So there's my endorsement speech for the night. Anyway, Mike has been taking some lessons from me, and we've been working on his reading skills because he didn't have any. And I don't know how old Mike is, mid-50s, I would think. And he's never learned to read particularly. I mean, he had a certain grasp of it, but not anything huge. He wasn't a great reader. And we've been working on it, and the moments that he grasps something are brilliant. It's really fun to watch because it's like, oh, I get it. And suddenly this difficult challenge that he was having before becomes a much easier task for him. And that's why I never understand. It's like, look, if you're a singer and you are listening to this, or you happen to see it later, I love singers. I am a singer. Like I said, I do a lot of singing. Nearly every drum session I do end up singing background vocals on. But speaking of that, my throat is, hang on. Oh, by the way, somebody asked me about this shirt. Yes, I got it at Abbey Road in London. Sure did. So, what in the world was I just talking about? It's gone. Yeah, Patrick, you have no idea, brother. Patrick just said, tell my wife that she is awesome for being the rock behind me. Yeah, Natalie, yeah. I chose well, gentlemen. You should too. Oh, I like that, Alba. My wife and I talk about beginner's mind. Basically, anyone can access that childlike wonder again and look at something like a guitar as if it's the first time to ever pick it up. That's absolutely true, man. No, Alba, I'm in LA now. I'm not in the UK. No, you're good. Yeah. No, you're not distracting. You're fine. Oh man, that's so cool. Yeah, I just happened. I was in London. I guess I got this shirt 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I've been a few times in the past 2 or 3 years, so I think it was 2 years ago that I was at Abbey Road. Might have been three. But you couldn't pass up going to Abbey Road, right? Getting the T-shirt. Gotta have a T-shirt. Back to what was I even talking about? It's gone. It's gone. I keep staring at my quarantine hair, going, "Oh man, what's happening? It's bad. That's bad." Anybody else have any questions? I'm gonna start wrapping it up here. About 11:35 Pacific time, and I do hope you guys are still enjoying these things. And if you, I know what I was saying. Singers. That's what I was talking about. Singers. That's right. Okay, it came back to me. If you are a singer and you're watching this, that's where I left off. When someone says, "Hey, have you ever had voice lessons?" Please don't be offended. That doesn't mean you can't sing. And every singer I've ever asked that question gets super offended. It's about learning technique, right? It's about learning technique. If you know the proper way to sing, you'll protect your instrument for life. You can have that instrument for life. If you don't, you're going to end up having problems by the time you're, 50. Certainly by the time you're 60. You want to be able to keep singing, man. And it's not such a long way off that you're 50 or 60. Trust me. And I think it's important that we all take lessons and learn the basics of what we do and value that. If we put value on the education of music, then we're going to put value on music. And I think that's a big thing that's missing right now. I'm very tired of one-hit wonders and pop music that's basically disposable. I very much want to have things. I very much want to have things back to a place where we musicians are valued societally, and I'm not so sure that random pop star, whoever it might be, is helping that. Some are, not all. Well, Alva says he likes my speaking voice. However, my singing voice couldn't be much different from my speaking voice. It is monumentally different. I am a natural countertenor. Go figure. So I have, essentially a soprano voice. When I sing, my speaking voice is not comfortable for me to sing in. I can, but it's not where I'm comfortable. I'm an octave and a half higher, ish, a super high register, because two of my vocal cords don't engage when I sing. Go figure. So yeah, I don't have a falsetto. I sing falsetto high without a falsetto. Go figure. And several of the people that I play with hear me sing and they can't figure out what's going on. So it's always been an interesting thing. What's Caleb saying here? Yeah, right. Caleb says it's a great tool to be able to read, and that's exactly right. And picking up a pair of sticks, it is a tool that you'll use forever. Absolutely, absolutely. Douglas says reading 9/8 or 6/8 is not as easy now because he doesn't do it as often. Man, it's really all about it's really all about continuing to do it, because that's a big part of it. For me, when I was learning to read, I learned to read single line marching stuff, right? So you can put single line marching stuff in front of me and bang, 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 and I can knock it right out. I think that's the way a lot of us snare drum guys are. I'm even a little more challenged with reading tenor music because it's on multiple lines. So that takes me a little longer to, oh yeah, okay, this one goes here, that one goes there, blah, 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 right? And then when it comes to piano music, that one is yet, here we have a second hand doing things. So all of these things require different levels of reading. And that's the same thing with a drum kit. When you read drum kit music, it's written on multiple lines. So you have to learn, and part of it is just straight up memorization. And as an example, I'm going to show you my coffee mug. So as an example, when you look at this, you see Big Bear, right? You don't see, well, let me rephrase this. You see Big Bear. That's what your brain goes, that's Big Bear. Well, you also can break it down to B-I-G-B-E-A-R, right? But you don't. You immediately go Big Bear, right? Now, why is that? Because you've learned that that's the word big and that's the word bear. And you also know that these letters make certain sounds and things like that. The same is true of reading music. It is simply another language. Eventually you learn that figure that is written 16th notes, 1 E-enda, 2 E-enda, let's say you see that written down. You don't look at it and have to break it down. You look at it and go, oh, whatever it is. So immediately you don't have to translate it. Your brain already knows what it is and you just play it, right? So that's a big part of it is as music becomes another language to you, you immediately start being able to speak that language more clearly and convey your musical ideas more clearly. Make sense? Yes. Alva, I will not demonstrate my singing voice because it sounds very weird when it's just me sitting here. You'd have to hear it in context. I promise. It's an interesting thing. Douglas, I am the opposite of baritone. I'm way up there. Baritone's down here where I'm speaking. This is my speaking voice is a baritone, but my singing voice is essentially soprano, slightly, maybe a mezzo soprano. And I used to sing mezzo soprano in the choir. So, and like I said, I don't have a falsetto. So for me, that's my actual singing voice. Marvin, how you doing, brother? Marvin's a killer drummer, guys. Yeah, exactly. How important is reading music? Very, very, very. So that's kind of already, And you laugh falsetto and sing baritone. Now that's funny. Don't see that very often. So that's basically it. Those are my thoughts on reading music. And if any of you have any questions, I'm easy to get. You know that. You can hit me on Facebook. I may not answer you right now, but I'll answer you soon as I can. And don't forget too that and I'm going to end this video with the same thing I started this video, and that's who in the world is hitting me up there? Oh, I see what that is. Okay. That piece of music on the floor, 11 pages for one song. So that's going to be fun to do, and hopefully you guys will get to hear it and see it maybe even next week, hopefully, because it's going to be a fun little thing. All right, gang. Thank you for tuning in. We had quite a few tonight, about 40 of us at different points tonight, so I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Feel free to share this and put it wherever you like. I'm not on the YouTube tip these days because they've been getting more and more difficult on musicians, so it is what it is. Douglas is asking me an unrelated question about traditional grip. He says, should you be able to dribble the fingers? Douglas, I don't know that I would necessarily say it's an absolute. For me, this is my desktop, so excuse that. But for me, being able to dribble has never really been that important, particularly. I do occasionally try the basketball bounce. I'm not good at it because, again, these are not things that I find to be particularly practical. So for me, keeping the finger locked down here, as you know how to do, you know how to do that. You're a traditional player. Keeping that finger locked down so that I'm still able to get my power and control here instead of trying to do it here. And I just think that's a problem. You wear your thumb out. Having that is all that I really need when combined with the turn and even the whip sometimes, for the backbeat thing. So that's what I would say to that. To me, it's not particularly important. It's not that it's not. It's not that it's not an interesting skill to have, but I'm not sure how practical it is. Yeah, that would be that's my thought on it. Andrew, how you doing, brother? So yeah, that's the whole thing. I've just never found it particularly necessary to be able to do that particularly long anyway. So hope that answers your question. Okay, everybody, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. I will see you probably in a couple of days. I had wanted to do some playing tonight, talk about some stuff, but unfortunately my setup was not happening tonight. So we're talking about this instead. Those of you who joined late, I'm signing off, but feel free to take a look at some of the earlier stuff. Yeah, you know, Caleb says those charts back here are probably what the guitar solo from Freebird looked like. He's probably right. This is definitely not Freebird. Those of you that are just joining, it's an 11-page chart that I'm messing around with. Oh, hey, Reggie, I didn't even know you were here, man. Glad to see you. All right, talk to you soon. Everybody take care. Be safe. If you're going out, you know, wear masks and stuff. Don't be that guy. All right. Okay, so Alva, you are in the UK. Okay, very cool. I'm a big fan of the UK, man. Big fan. All right, gang, I'll see you. Hit me up on Messenger or on Insta. I never talk about my Insta or any of those things. I guess I need to get better at this, huh? All right, talk to you soon.